Hey, let's get into why most coaches are scaling backwards. See, most coaches think that scaling means something like going from organic to ads or hiring an agency or building some huge team or something like that, but that really isn't the problem. What I want to get into is the nitty gritty of what actually works when it comes to scaling and what it actually means to scale. Let's go. All right, look, here's the first thing is that most coaches tend to jump from strategy to strategy. So they're trying to scale chaos. You can't do that. You cannot scale chaos. And so going from you've got this webinar working, now you're going to do a challenge, now you're going to do this lead magnet or this low ticket offer, or all this other stuff. That's not scaling. That's just making more chaos. You've got to pick one system and zero in on it and really work on making it the best it can possibly be. The second thing is that scaling really means getting more traffic. Isn't that really what it is? So you might have a really solid offer and your funnel might be dialed in just perfectly, but just not enough people are seeing it. So that's not really a conversion problem, it's a visibility problem. And most people tend to work on the other side. So scaling starts with getting more attention. That should be your goal when you're thinking about scaling. Ads can help, but not if your base audience is already really tiny. If you don't have an audience or you have a very small one, it's tough to make ads work right out of the gate. My guess is that if you're trying to scale and you haven't developed an audience yet, you're expecting ads to do all the heavy lifting. That's not a good place to start from. Next is leaking conversions, and that's what happens to a lot of coaches. So what it looks like is you're getting some traction, but not enough people are buying. That's usually a leak in your system, not so much a leak in your offer. So common leaks are things like no consistent follow-up, right? Or a weak or confusing call to action, or no retargeting, not emailing your list enough. That's all very common leaks that happen for most coaches. They don't really have a system in place to keep up with people, to keep following up, because remember, when you're selling relatively high ticket offers, you've got to get in front of these people multiple times. You're not selling socks, okay? You've got to build trust with them, and so the higher the offer, the more trust you have to have. So remember that when you're thinking about your follow-up stuff. And the other thing just to mention along those lines is don't worry about offending them. In other words, if I heard a coach say the other day, "Hey Ben, somebody emailed me and said I was going to buy from you, but you email too much." First of all, they weren't going to buy. If that was stopping them, then they weren't going to buy to begin with. So that's not really true. If somebody emails you that, I say good riddance, get them off your list because it's just dead weight. If you're not getting complaints, in other words, if people aren't saying, "Hey, you're emailing too much," then you're not emailing enough. See, you can't scale before you fix the leaks. You have to fix those leaks first. So patch the holes first, then scale. This is what scaling looks like. Scaling is clarity. It isn't chaos. Scaling is keeping your head down, doubling down on what works, pruning out what isn't working, and making small, subtle tweaks that lead to big. See, real scaling is boring. It's not these massive launches and all this other quote unquote exciting stuff. Scaling is boring, it's steady, it's focused, and it's strategic. So the mindset shift you probably will have to have is scaling is about doing more. That's usually what happens. People think they have to do more. It's about doing better and doing what you already know works more consistently. You don't need a new funnel, you just need a predictable one. You don't need a bigger team, you don't necessarily need an agency, you just need one system that converts every single week. The fastest way to go is stop chasing scale and start chasing repeatability. All right, just to kind of wrap this all up, you can't scale confusion, you can't scale chaos, you can't scale inconsistency, and you can't scale backwards. Get one thing working, make it repeatable, then scale forward on purpose, not out of panic. Look, if you like this kind of stuff, please subscribe, and I'll catch you next week.